To all our listeners out there, especially those celebrating, a very happy Maha Shivaratri.
Happy Shivaratri.
I know that for so many of you, especially those far from home in India, this night holds, well, a really special significance, right?
Absolutely.
It's a time to honor Shiva,
Mm-hmm.
that incredibly powerful deity who, well, represents so much.
Yeah.
Creation, preservation, and destruction.
The cosmic dance of the universe.
Absolutely, yeah, the cosmic dance.
It's a beautiful concept, isn't it?
Oh, it really is.
This idea of a force that both creates and destroys at the same time.
It's very powerful.
Reminding us that life is cyclical, everything's interconnected.
I completely agree. And speaking of interconnectedness, it's just so fascinating how cultural and natural landscapes sometimes intersect in the most unexpected ways.
Right.
And we're actually, we're exploring one such intersection today.
Oh,
A
cool.
place that's actually named after Shiva right here in the American Southwest.
You must be talking about Shiva Temple in the Grand Canyon.
You got it. Shiva Temple. What a story.
It really is quite a story, yeah.
So take us back.
All right. So back in the late 1800s, a geologist named Clarence Dutton, he was surveying the canyon.
Okay.
And he was just really struck by this majestic butte. It just rises high above the canyon floor.
Okay, wait. Before we go any further, I need you to paint me a picture.
Okay.
When you say butte, I mean, what exactly are we talking about?
Sure.
I'm picturing something dramatic.
Oh, absolutely. Dramatic is a good word for it.
Okay.
So imagine like a steep-sided, flat-topped rock formation, almost like a giant mesa, but smaller.
Gotcha.
And it just stands in such stark contrast to the surrounding canyon rising up in isolation, almost as if it were like a sacred monument.
Interesting.
And Dutton, well, he had a bit of a poetic side, apparently, and a real fondness for mythology.
So he saw this isolated, imposing butte and thought to himself, hey, that looks like something worthy of a powerful deity.
Precisely. And given his interest in mythology, Shiva, the deity of creation and destruction, just seemed like the perfect fit.
Wow.
Hence the name Shiva Temple.
I love that story. It really makes you think about how our own cultural backgrounds could just totally shape the way we see the natural world.
Absolutely.
I mean, Dutton could have just named it, I don't know, like butte number 37 or something.
Yeah.
But instead he saw a connection to something much bigger, much more symbolic.
Yeah, it's a testament to the power of storytelling, right? We humans, we always seek meaning and connection in the world around us.
We do?
And we often draw upon our own cultural narratives to make sense of the unknown.
Okay, so we've got this incredible butte. It's named after this powerful Hindu deity. It's perched high in the Grand Canyon.
Right.
That alone, I mean, it's got my imagination going.
Yeah.
But what's it actually like up there?
Well, let's just say it's not your average picnic spot.
Okay.
Shiva Temple sits at a pretty lofty 7,646 feet above sea level.
Wow.
That's over 2,000 feet higher than the South Rim, which is, where most visitors experience the canyon.
Yeah. Whoa, that's a serious difference in elevation.
Yeah, it is.
I'm guessing that means the climate up there is, well, pretty unique, right?
Oh, you bet. We actually have some climate data comparing Shiva Temple to other spots in the canyon, and it's really fascinating to see the variations.
Okay.
So while the South Rim enjoys, a relatively mild climate, Shiva Temple is actually classified as cold semi-arid.
Interesting.
It gets much cooler temperatures, especially at night, and it even gets a decent amount of snowfall in the winter.
That's incredible. So you could be down at Phantom Ranch sweating it out in like 100-degree heat.
Right.
And then hike up to Shiva Temple and find yourself in a completely different world, almost, I don't know, like alpine.
Exactly. The Grand Canyon is like this giant staircase of climates.
It is.
And Shiva Temple sits high up on those steps with its own unique weather system going on.
Okay, so imagine you're standing atop Shiva Temple. Wind's whipping around you, the snow's crunching under your boots, and you're looking out over this vast, rugged landscape that's been carved by the Colorado River over millions of years.
It's a humbling experience, to say the least.
It is.
You really get a sense of the immense power of nature, the vastness of time, and your own small place within it all.
Yeah. And to think, this place caught the attention of a group of scientists back in 1937.
Right.
They launched this whole expedition to Shiva Temple.
Huh.
They hope to discover new species that might have been isolated and evolved on the butte.
Yes. It was led by a Dr. Harold E. Anthony,
Okay.
and they called it the Lost World Expedition.
Of course they did.
They envisioned Shiva Temple as this untouched sanctuary
Right.
where, unique life forms might have evolved in total isolation.
So they basically set out to find their own real-life Jurassic Park up there.
Exactly.
What a story.
It's a great story.
But I bet getting to the top of Shiva Temple was no walk in the park, though.
It most certainly wasn't.
Yeah.
Shiva Temple, with its steep cliffs and those treacherous slopes, presented, well, a really formidable challenge even for, seasoned mountaineers.
I bet.
Imagine, navigating these sheer rock bands of Coconino sandstone and Kaibab limestone.
Okay.
Not to mention those treacherous talus slopes, that loose, rocky debris that just shifts underfoot.
Okay, hold on. You're losing me a little with the geology jargon.
Oh, sorry.
What are these rock formations you're talking about?
Sure.
And what makes them so challenging to climb?
Right. Okay, let me break it down for you.
Okay.
So imagine the Grand Canyon as like a giant layer cake,
Okay.
with each layer representing a different period in Earth's history.
I like that.
These rock bands we're talking about are essentially those layers exposed on the sides of Shiva Temple.
Okay.
The Coconino sandstone, for example, is a thick layer of, well, it's wind-blown sand that solidified over millions of years.
Okay.
It tends to form these steep cliffs and overhangs, which can, well, make for some pretty tricky climbing.
So it's like trying to climb up a giant, crumbly sand castle.
Exactly.
Oh.
Okay, and then you have the Kaibab limestone, which forms the top layer of Shiva Temple.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard, durable rock, but it can also be very slippery, especially when wet.
And then you mentioned talus slopes.
Yes.
What are those?
Oh, right. Imagine a giant pile of loose rocks and boulders that have crumbled down from the cliffs above.
So like walking on a giant, unstable scree field.
Exactly.
Yikes.
It's incredibly challenging because you just never know what's going to give way beneath your feet.
No kidding. So basically they were trying to climb a giant, crumbly sandcastle topped with a slippery, rocky layer, all while navigating a giant pile of loose rubble.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
No wonder they called it an expedition.
Right. And did I mention they even parachuted supplies to the site?
Wait, what? They parachuted in supplies?
They did. It was just too difficult and dangerous to haul everything up the traditional way.
Oh, wow.
They had to get a little creative.
Wow, that's incredible. These guys were serious about their science. They were willing to risk life and limb to get to the top of Shiva Temple and see what they could find.
So, did they discover any of those elusive new species, their lost world creatures?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. As fascinating as the idea of a lost world atop Shiva Temple is, well, they didn't actually find any undiscovered species.
Oh, man. No prehistoric critters hiding out up there. That's kind of bummer.
Yeah.
But hey, at least they had those amazing views to console themselves with, right?
I know, right?
And who knows, maybe they found something even more interesting than I don't know, a new species of lizard.
Mm.
So what did they find?
Well, they didn't find any new animal species, but they did find evidence of, well, previous human inhabitants, the ancestral Pueblones.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Their dwellings and artifacts kind of hint at a long and rich history in this, seemingly desolate place. Wait a minute. Are you telling me that people actually lived on top of Shiva Temple? I mean, I can barely imagine climbing it for a few hours, let alone making it my home.
Right.
I mean, how did they even get up there?
It's a great question. Remember those steep rock bands and talus slopes we talked about?
Yeah.
So the ancestral Puebloans likely used natural features to their advantage. Things like cracks and ledges,
Okay.
maybe even ancient trails that were carved into the rock.
Wow.
These people they were incredibly resourceful,
Yeah.
able to survive in this, it was a challenging environment, but they were able to do it with their ingenuity and deep knowledge of the land.
It's mind-blowing to think about their resilience, and adaptation. Building a life on top of this isolated butte makes you wonder about their relationship with this place, especially considering its name. We're talking about a place named after a deity who represents creation, preservation, and destruction.
Yeah.
What kind of significance do you think that Shiva Temple held for the ancestral Pueblones?
That's where it gets really intriguing. It's hard to say for certain as we don't have any written records from them, unfortunately. So we have to rely on the archaeological evidence and try to piece together the story based on what they left behind.
Right.
But given the challenging nature of the environment and the effort that it must have taken them to reach the summit, it's safe to assume that Shiva Temple held a special significance for them. Perhaps as a sacred site or a place of spiritual power or ritual practice.
It's like a giant puzzle, isn't it? Trying to decipher the past, to imagine their daily lives, their beliefs, their connection to this unique landscape.
Oh.
It's amazing to think that all of this history is layered onto this already geologically incredible formation. So we've talked about the Lost World expedition, the ancestral pueblones, the challenging terrain, but I want to circle back to the geology for a moment.
Okay.
You mentioned that the Grand Canyon's like a layer cake of time. Can you break that down for me a little bit?
Sure.
What's the story that those layers tell us about Shiva Temple and the surrounding canyon?
Absolutely. It's like reading a history book, but written in stone.
I love that.
At the very top, you have the Kaibab limestone, the youngest layer, formed about 270 million years ago.
Wow.
Below that lies the Coconino sandstone. Those wind-blown sands solidified over eons.
Okay, so if we were standing on top of Shiva Temple, we'd be standing on that 270 million-year-old Kaibab limestone.
You got it.
Wow. That's incredible. I mean, it's almost impossible to grasp that kind of timescale. What else lies beneath our feet?
Deeper down, you would find the Supai group. It's a mix of sandstone, siltstone, and shale. It represents a period of ancient river deltas and coastal plains.
Oh.
And below that, the iconic Redwall limestone, known for its sheer reddish cliffs. It's a testament to a time when this entire area was submerged beneath a shallow sea, teeming with marine life.
That's amazing.
And finally, at the very bottom, you have the Tonto group. It's a diverse collection of rocks that tell the story of the canyon's, well, its earliest beginnings.
It's mind-boggling to think about, how each of those layers represents, millions of years of geological history.
Yeah.
It's like standing on a time machine.
It really is.
It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Our human lifespan just feels so fleeting in comparison to the vastness of geological time.
It does. And yet, here we are, part of that story, connected to this ancient landscape through the lives and stories of, well, those who came before us, like the ancestral pueblones.
Wow.
And who knows, maybe even the geologist who named it after Shiva felt that connection too, across cultures and across time.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What was it about Shiva Temple that spoke to him so deeply? What was it about this particular formation, amidst all the wonders of the Grand Canyon, that prompted him to connect it to a deity from a completely different culture?
Perhaps it was the butte's sheer scale and grandeur. Maybe it was its isolation, rising so dramatically from the canyon floor, like a monument to the forces that have shaped this landscape over millions of years. It could also have been its unique shape. Maybe it evoked a sense of power and mystery. Whatever it was, it's clear that Shiva Temple sparked something in Dutton's imagination.
That's the power of nature, isn't it? To inspire awe and wonder, to connect us to something larger than ourselves, something ancient and enduring. And for me, it becomes even more fascinating when you consider the human element. The ancestral Pueblones who made this challenging place their home. It's a story of resilience, adaptation, and a deep connection to the land.
It's a reminder that there are countless stories hidden within the landscape, just waiting to be discovered.
Yeah.
And it's a testament to the human spirit, our ability to adapt and thrive in, even the most challenging environments.
Okay, I have to ask, have you ever been to Shiva Temple? Have you experienced this place firsthand?
I haven't had the opportunity to climb Shiva Temple myself. I leave that to the expert mountaineers.
Right.
But I've spent countless hours poring over maps and studying aerial photographs, reading accounts from those who have made the journey. And based on all of that, I think I can paint a pretty good picture of what it might be like to stand on that summit.
Oh, please do. I'm already picturing it in my mind, but I'd love to hear your perspective.
Okay, so imagine this. You finally reach the summit after a challenging climb. You're standing on solid Kaibab limestone, the winds whipping through the ponderosa pines that cling to the edges of the butte, and you look north and the vast expanse of the North Rim stretches out before you, its forests seeming to go on forever. To the south, the canyon opens up like a giant chasm. It's just a tapestry of colors and textures that seems to just defy description.
It's incredible, isn't it? Just thinking about those views, the feeling of being on top of the world, surrounded by the grandeur of the Grand Canyon.
It is. And as you stand there taking it all in, you realize that you're not just on top of a mountain. You're standing on a nexus of history, geology, and human imagination. You're connected to the ancient forces that shaped this landscape, to the people who called this place home, and to the stories that have been woven into its very essence.
It sounds like a truly transformative experience, something that would stay with you long after you left. I'm definitely adding Shiva Temple to my bucket list.
You should.
But for those of us who aren't quite ready to tackle that climb, is there a way to experience, well, a little bit of that magic from afar?
Absolutely. There are plenty of resources available, books, articles, photographs. They can, well, they can give you a glimpse into the world of Shiva Temple. And of course, there's nothing quite like seeing the Grand Canyon for yourself.
And who knows, maybe you'll be inspired to do a little digging of your own. Maybe you'll uncover a new story, a new connection to this incredible landscape.
That's what we hope for, isn't it? To spark that curiosity, that desire to learn more, to explore further.
Speaking of sparking curiosity, I have one more question for you. Remember those ancestral Puebloan dwellings we talked about?
I do.
Imagine for a moment we could go back in time. Sit down with one of those ancient inhabitants of Shiva Temple, someone who, lived and breathed this place centuries ago. What kind of stories do you think they would tell us about Shiva Temple?
Now that's a question that takes us into the realm of speculation and imagination.
I
But that's where the real magic lies, isn't it? In trying to bridge that gap between, well, between our modern understanding and the lived experiences of those who came before us.
So let's speculate. What kind of stories might they tell us about Shiva Temple? What kind of significance might they have attributed to this place?
Well, I imagine their stories would be deeply intertwined with the natural world, with the spirits they believed inhabited the rocks and trees, the constellations that guided their journeys, the animals they relied upon for sustenance. Perhaps they saw Shiva Temple as a place of power, a place where they could connect with the forces that shaped their lives. They might have had stories about the creation of the canyon, about the spirits that dwelled within its depths, about the rituals they performed to ensure a successful harvest or a safe journey.
It's fascinating to think about how their perception of this place, it might have differed so much from our own. They wouldn't have had our geological knowledge, our understanding of deep time. But they had their own ways of knowing, their own stories that gave meaning to this landscape. And those stories are just as valid, just as important as our scientific understanding.
Exactly. They remind us that there are multiple ways of seeing and understanding the world around us. And that's something we should always strive for, to be open to different perspectives, to listen to the stories that have been passed down through generations, to find the connections that bind us to each other and to the natural world.
Speaking of connections, I think this whole episode has been a beautiful testament to that. The connection between culture and nature, between science and mythology, between the past and the present. And it all circles back to that initial spark, that moment when a geologist named Clarence Dutton looked up at a majestic butte in the Grand Canyon and saw something worthy of a powerful deity. It's a reminder that even in the most seemingly desolate places, life finds a way. Stories are born. And the spirit of exploration, it lives on.
Absolutely. And as we celebrate Mahashivaratri, a festival that honors the cosmic dance of creation and destruction, let us remember the interconnectedness of all things. The stories we tell, the places we explore, and the ways we choose to see the world are all part of that grand tapestry.
To all of our listeners out there, especially those celebrating Mahashivaratri today, we invite you to look at the world with that sense of wonder, that openness to different perspectives. Who knows what stories you might discover, what connections you might make.
And if you ever find yourself at the Grand Canyon, gazing up at Shiva Temple, remember the layers of history, mythology, and human experience that are woven into that majestic formation.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even in the most seemingly desolate places, life finds a way, stories are born, and the spirit of exploration lives on.
And what strikes me? We've been talking about Shiva Temple as this, this isolated butte, this really challenging environment. But for the ancestral Puebloans who lived there, well, it was home.
Right.
What do we know about their daily lives?
Right.
How did they adapt to this unique environment?
It really is a testament to their resilience, and their ingenuity. They had to be incredibly resourceful to be able to thrive in such a demanding landscape. We know, for example, that they were really skilled farmers.
Okay.
They cultivated crops like corn, beans, and squash in the very limited arable land that was available on the butte. They likely supplemented their diet with, wild plants and animals that were found in the surrounding canyon.
It makes you wonder how they managed to grow anything up there with such, limited soil and water. I mean, do they have any special techniques?
That's one of the things archaeologists are still trying to piece together.
Yeah.
There is evidence of check dams and other water management systems. It indicates that they carefully conserved and directed the scarce water resources that were available to them. They may have also used techniques like dry farming, relying on the moisture from snowmelt and those infrequent rainfalls to sustain their crops.
That's amazing. It speaks to their deep understanding of the environment, their ability to work with nature rather than against it.
Exactly.
What about shelter? What kind of dwellings did they build?
The ancestral Pueblones at Shiva Temple built structures that are known as pit houses.
Okay.
These were partially dug into the ground,
Okay.
and they were covered with roofs made of logs, branches, and mud. These pit houses provided insulation from, the really extreme temperatures up there, and they served as both living spaces and storage areas.
So it's like they were living in, like, semi-subterranean homes, blending into the landscape, almost becoming one with the butte itself.
Exactly.
It's far cry from our modern-day apartments and houses.
I know, right?
What else can you tell us about, about their daily lives? What kind of tools did they use? What were their social structures like?
So archaeologists have uncovered, they've uncovered a variety of tools and artifacts that provide these little glimpses into their daily activities. We found grinding stones for processing corn, pottery shards that hint at their artistic expressions, and arrowheads that suggest that hunting was part of their subsistence strategy.
It's like holding a piece of the past in your hands.
It is.
Imagining the people who created and used these objects.
Yeah.
It makes the history come alive, doesn't it?
It really does. And it reminds us that these weren't just like abstract figures from the past.
Right.
They were real people living their lives, facing challenges, celebrating triumphs, just like us.
Yeah.
Their story is a reminder it's a reminder of our shared human experience, our connection to the past, and our responsibility to learn from and preserve, to preserve those who came before us.
Thinking about everything we've discussed today, it's clear that Shiva Temple is so much more than just a geological formation. It's this place where nature, culture, and history intersect, and they do it in a truly remarkable way. It's a place that inspires just awe and wonder, a place that holds within it the stories of ancient seas, windblown sands, these resilient people, and, a geologist who saw a connection to a powerful deity from across the world.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that the world is full of these hidden wonders just waiting to be discovered. And it's an invitation to look closer, to listen to the stories that the land has to tell, and to find those connections that bind us all.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So to our listeners out there, especially those celebrating Mahashivaratri today, we encourage you to embrace that spirit of curiosity and exploration. Seek out those stories that resonate with you. Connect with the natural world and appreciate the interconnectedness of all things.
And who knows, maybe you'll even be inspired to make your own pilgrimage to Shiva Temple one day. Stand on that summit and experience the magic of this place for yourself.
And if you do, remember to tread lightly, to respect the legacy of those who came before you, and to carry the stories of Shiva Temple with you as you journey back into the world.
Beautiful.
Happy Mahashivaratri, everyone.
Happy Mahashivaratri.